Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you this very fine 30th of December?
Well, Merry Betwixtmas to you, Mal. How are you?
I'm good. Now, this is going to be a very special. I know that pretty much every week is special, but this is a very special week, isn't it? So we're going to actually go and do a review of the whole year. And what a year it's been. How's yours been, Matt?
There's a lot to try and remember, isn't there, Mal? I've putting notes together for this. It was like January and February, and then suddenly it's August, the end of the year, and I forgot this massive thing that happened. Go back to when everyone was creating LinkedIn and Instagram posts of themselves as toys and various other bits and pieces that dropped during the course of the year.
Yeah, I didn't do any of that. I just shoved every single version of the podcast into Notebook LM and asked AI what we talked about.
No, I know that because you then sent it to me and then realised that you'd restricted access, so I couldn't access it.
Like, to be fair, you are
with
not
one hand, you take away with the other.
You're not allowed access to many things, just in case. Okay, but yes, listen. So there is so much to kind of round out. Really, this is the end of 2025, a seismic year in property and in AI. So I guess we should probably start, as we often do, with our property news. All right, so 2025 property news. I think that probably the biggest story, if we look kind of across the globe around property this year, was around the sort of market leaders in the portals and what they were getting up to, because we obviously focus very much on the sort of tech side of things of the property market, and our backgrounds kind of lends itself to this as well. But I think it's just been a really, really fascinating, particularly since about August time, to see just how far the portals, the main portals, so REA Group, Rightmove, so some of the ones over in the States as well, CoStar, just how much their kind of share prices have taken a bit of a pounding, because I think people and investors are starting to kind of wake up to the idea that this is very much a seismic change in what the value of these businesses are, their propositions, and what consumers are going to get from them. Matt, you've been kind of obviously following a lot of this sort of stuff along the way. I have a relatively kind of settled take on it. How do you feel about how the portals have sort of got through the?
Well, there's been various stories coming out of it, hasn't it? And even to the extent that when we were chatting just beforehand, it's like, was it this year or last year that REA tried to buy Rightmove? And it's actually September last year, wasn't it? But yeah, there was the acquisition of Domain by obviously CoStar to align that with obviously what they've done with Homes.com over in America and on the market here. There was various things went on in Dubai, whereby there was a huge investment raise by Property Finder and nearly an IPO by Bayet.
Yeah,
they pulled out at the last minute on that one. And then, as you say, it's like more sort of half two or H2, and that's where Rightmove share price certainly took a pounding, didn't it? I think it was at a high for the year in August, and then various initiatives started to get announced, such as the AI initiative with a little bit of investment from them that really pounded that share price, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think the Dubai one's quite interesting actually, because and I don't think we really talked about it that much this year, but essentially, as you say, Property Finder and that group. And which group is it? It's not the Dibizzle group, is it, or is it the?
No, that's Bayet.
That's the competitor, isn't it? Yeah. So that they were going to go and actually do an IPO, but literally kind of the day or 2 days before it was due to go, they pulled it, which kind of suggests that investors were pretty spooked about what the valuation of that business was going to be, right?
That's it. And so both of them were alluded to, weren't they, when we were away in October at Property Portal Watch? And I think the raise by Property Finder had already happened, and then there's another 450 million came into them shortly afterwards. And then, as you say, the Bayet IPO was all set to go, and it seems at the 11th hour to get hauled back in again. So what those were reasons for that we're not obviously privy to, or you can speculate on. But with the Rightmove share price, that there was the massive drop off in November, wasn't there? And that was very much aligned with their announcement around the investment in the AI side of things.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think you said at the time, it was sort of small change compared to the revenues they were bringing in.
Yeah, exactly. 18 million over the course of next year. And I think only 12 million of that was actually from their own cash reserves. The other six was kind of from debt or something like that. But yeah, look, I think if we look forwards as well, so, one of the things we want to do in this particular episode is kind of have a bit of a look back and then kind of a little bit of a what's going to happen in 2026. I think that there's going to be a lot more negativity around the portals. I think that there's going to be a lot of activity. I think agents are going to become much more mindful of the power of their content and are going to get really, really quite cute and quite clever about what they do with that. I did see in one of the kind of the agent groups that Rightmove has sent round some new terms and conditions and things like that, which I think are going to get more and more. And the agents were actually discussing it, and I have never seen that before. Before everybody's just kind of like signed whatever, but actually they're kind of going deep into which clauses have changed and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's really interesting around particularly the data side. So I think when we kick back this time next year, I do think that there's going to have been a lot of shifts. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Zoopla finally kind of goes and just the Silver Lake essentially just goes, look, who wants this, and that is swallowed up by somebody else. I would also not be very surprised actually if CoStar just suddenly decided to change everybody's names to homes.com. I think it's almost like that they didn't do anything very much this year. They didn't really advertise hardly at all, despite the big fanfares that came in the end of 2023. So it kind of almost feels like they're kind of keeping their powder dry. And I sense something big is probably coming from that corner. Now they've got domain; they acquired domain in Australia this year as well. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. And obviously, Rightmove is under kind of some legal threats, and there's a lot of unrest in the agent population about them. That's not unusual. They've had the agent unrest for a long time, but it does feel a little bit different this time, and it does feel a little bit more like that something might happen.
That point around terms and conditions as well and diving into them is an interesting one, because I know over in Australia, REA have started taking a massive chunk of social media spend and actually bringing that in. And obviously, when they start taking the social media spend, it's not just the money that's coming as part of it, but it's that social media data as well, isn't it? Or data, as they say over there. And when you're
They
dealing with the
do.
likes of Meta and Google Ads, then you start to get that social economic data that comes alongside it. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to know whether Rightmove's got anything to play in that side of things. That first party data, and you said on the last pod as well around it's your content, you're creating it, and then you're being asked to pay to give that content over to someone else. And the more you do with your own first party data in your own channels and retain that data, the better. And I know I've banged on about listing logic over the course of 2025, but what they do with the sort of the first publisher, first protocols, and how that services you better in the large language models. I would be interested to see if Rightmove have introduced any terms in that piece.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's explicit, but I think there are very much sort of implications around what they can do with your data once they've got hold of it. So yeah, I think lots of that sort of changes. I think if you do look kind of further abroad, look at Zillow and people like that. Obviously they're under a lot of legal issues, mainly driven by CoStar and Compass, two of their kind of strong competitors. So yeah, I think it's going to be another year of upheaval for portals, and I think that can only be good news for agents.
Coming back on your homes.com point, because obviously that's
Mm,
bounced from 2023. Everything was going to be homes.com. Then no, sorry, 24 was homes.com was everything. Then
yeah.
25, Andy Florence dialed it back, who's the CEO of CoStar. What colour is the primary brand colour of homes.com, Mal? Is it My Porter Orange?
Not that I know of. But yeah, no, it's a. I don't. Yeah, I think that they are going to be quite. I mean, they're typically quite aggressive, and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in the nicking of other people's colours aggressive, but yeah, no, certainly I think that they are. It's been unusually quiet, and I think that's why I think that 2026 is probably going to be something big from that particular area. But yeah, so yeah, watch this space. Look after your data. Be smart and go and find out as much as you possibly can about what's going on. All right, that's the first of our property kind of roundups. Wanted to dive into a very kind of almost particularly UK phenomenon, which is around the sort of business models of agency and how that's kind of morphed over the last year. So if you look at the self-employed, you look at online, and you look at some of the corporates, and you look at the independents. I think, and again, we were just chatting off air, Matt. You were saying that Chris Watkin, commentator over here in the UK, has identified that EXP are now the biggest selling agency brand in the UK. That's right.
That's spot on. So 2025, they came in first for the most homes sold subject to contracts. And put that in context, back in 2020, they were 153rd placed.
Mm.
So quite an achievement on their part to sort of move all the way up there. And I think it was this year that they passed 600 agents as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think they're up to 800 or something like that. I think they've got a crazy number now.
850 apparently, according to the LinkedIn post.
Okay, well done. So yeah, it's been a huge year for them, and they just kept picking up steam. So fair play to Adam Day and all the team that's been building that, and all the agents as well. It is a phenomenon, right? It's something that is very has marked a seismic shift. And I think this year has been the big one. But they've got designs on over 1,000 branches and or 1,000 people, 1,000 entities, and keeping on growing. And I think that their kind of combination of lifestyle kind of operations, as in you can fit your work around your lifestyle and things like that, plus obviously the incredibly cheap way that you can get onto the portals and get access to CRM system in Loop, I think is what attracts so many different types of agent as well. There's some that are bricks and mortar agents under the EXP banner now, as well as as well as a lot of the pure kind of self-employed individuals. So yeah, no, it's really interesting to see how that has changed over the last year and how it is going to continue to kind of morph. I think that it's an interesting time for the kind of corporate side of things as well. Connell's, obviously the big beast, has had a relatively quiet year. I think it's done a couple of acquisitions along the way, but nothing seismic, and certainly nothing on the scale of the likes of Lomond, LRG, and others. But yeah, what's your kind of take on how the corporates have been moving?
I think the corporates, obviously, there's been a huge amount of consolidation and acquisition, has there? You just touched on there with Lomond and LRG being two of the big ones. Amiri's almost gone quiet in the meantime after what they've done with the Chestons and Chase Buchanan brands, bringing the likes of obviously, and actually think about Foxtons as well. They acquired Ludlow
Yeah,
Thompson, didn't they? So,
it's
but
true.
also in the self-employed area, there was consolidation and acquisition, wasn't there? From people, is it the Agency UK acquired and merged with, get it the right way around, the agency, and then
Yes, goes back
also
as well.
the London broker and Harding Green. So those come together, and I think with the likes of EXP, there's building a bit of a critical mass of the lifestyle people. And I always think of the one in sort of South Wales who's almost gig economy agency of I'm working on the lifeboats and will sell your house when I'm not at sea sort of approach. To some of these have got 4 or 5 layers of referral structure within them, haven't they? You talked about bricks and mortar, but they've almost got a whole agency size, like 30 or 40 people within them. And
Mhm.
that isn't so much that gig economy approach. They're people who are taking it properly serious. And I think that's where that sort of critical mass is building from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like with any kind of any entity, there are some who are, as you say, taking it really seriously and are looking at the numbers and constantly kind of driving. And I think they've got quite an interesting way. I think that it's every Thursday morning or something like that. They have like a kind of the real high achievers all get together and kind of have a meeting and challenge each other and have an accountability sessions and stuff like that, which I think is amazing. Preserves some of the best attributes of some of the more successful, one might call them traditional estate agents, with and allies that with some of the more kind of flexible and funky aspects that EXP brings along. So yeah, no, it's obviously working because they are now the biggest single estate agency brand or associated brands in the country, and that's huge kudos to them. But yes, I think it's going to be an interesting time for the I think particularly the onliners. Again, this year we reviewed 25. It was when essentially Purple Bricks, which is the new name for Strike, new, a couple of years old now. They've started laying loads of people off. They had a free, sell your house for free offer that very quietly was dropped, and now you've got to pay whatever it is for every single transaction. It just feels like it's that particular model that was always kind of only on steroids via marketing money that came in via investors. That seems like it's got to be gasping its last, isn't it?
I felt like you were almost actually sort of talking about it as having passed away, right? So,
Mm.
but it's been for a while. I know you said the chap who sort of started Purple Bricks is waging a war on agency, and while he's still got funds in his pocket, he'll keep it going. But it certainly does feel like it's on its last legs.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, looking into next year, wouldn't be surprised to see that the final exploration of that, the kind of purple zombie that is purple bricks. I would obviously see plenty more coming into the EXP ecosystem. And yeah, what I think from the independent point of view, obviously a lot of the really, really good ones are being kind of swallowed up by the likes of LRG, by Lomond and others. But there's the real kind of, almost strong traditional regionals, Beresfords, your Webbers, people like that, really, really good brands. And they're still riding high. And I think that, 2026 is much more likely to be a year for quality independence to be able to articulate their value more as well. I think, we've often spoken about the fact that independent agency can get the differentiators can get lost, because if I'm just coming into the market and I'm just looking on property portals, all I get is like, this number of pixels for my logo, this many characters for my description. And as a consumer, I'm just looking at it, everything just kind of looks the same. But I do think, and particularly with AI, I think that people are going to be able to actually articulate their value proposition a hell of a lot better. They're going to be able to showcase their people, the areas they cover, their history, all the things that make them interesting and different, and actually, on the basis of that, be able to potentially charge a more, let's call it, realistic commission that perhaps is true for most of the rest of the world. That actually allows them to kind of really focus hard on the quality side of things, rather than just kind of almost living hand to mouth, which is something that was true a little while ago. Don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, no, with the portals, exactly that. You're sort of looking almost through the letterbox and just seeing what you're allowed to show, right? And that's what Robert May with his Rummage 4 a while back tries to do with backlinks and
Yeah.
potentially loops off to somewhere else. But with AI, in the same way as social media, really gives you that chance to be a digital mayor of your area and actually talk positively and openly and in glowing terms about all the things, not just about the areas that you cover, but also the benefits that you bring. And obviously, you can really open your shoulders up on those things.
Love that. Digital mayor, yeah. So that's we're going to be using that. Okay, that's
You
next
can
year's
have that.
phrase.
Are you happy with
Love
that?
it. Thanks. Yeah. No,
You're going to
beautiful,
make our
beautiful.
top five. What was the top five again? Or is that
Yeah.
themed?
So for stat fans out there,
Wasn't one of them, Mal? You said wasn't included.
no, we didn't do any of the and we didn't do any of the Reallys or any of the Malcolms or anything like that. What we did was we said, right, what are the top five most frequently used words in the entire back history of our 2025 podcasts? And number one, unsurprisingly, was AI. Number two was property. Number three was Matt, because I'm very polite and always call Matt by his name. Number four was Rightmove, and number five was agents. Okay, so we actually managed to kind of that probably summarizes quite a lot of what we end up talking about, I think.
Surprised Rightmove made the top five.
That's why that's number one, right? Yes. So again, if we kind of think about other things that have been happening in the world of property over the last year, then I think that the kind of final piece we want to talk about was the innovation side. So actually, what is it that agents have been doing out there? What's kind of coming down the track? What's happening? Some of the innovation has been driven by regulation or anticipated regulation. The Renters' Rights Act is something that was driving a lot of improvements in some of the property management side of businesses. I think also a lot of the kind of side of how do you go out and get your customers? What is your kind of forward looking marketing campaigns? And I think that there's been some really interesting kind of spaces in there. Did anything stand out for you from the property innovation side, Matt?
I think the bits that really came along is almost going back to our first story about self-employed agencies and that sort of model, like seeing some of those traditional agencies actually introduce that alongside their normal operating model. I know a number of regional, really strong independents that have introduced that, and it's working really well, alongside sort of a change in their fee models as well, or at least the ability to say to a vendor, you can pay more up front and less on completion, but this is the structure we're going with, almost a slider model, and you can pick your own upfront fee. So blending those two together with the self-employed and the upfront fee approach. Also seen a lot of people change the way that they schedule their marketing. So not necessarily sticking it straight on Rightmove and Zoopla and on the market, but actually holding back and putting it on more regional, less fee-paying portals alongside their websites and social media, and even early bird email rounds as well. So sort of bring that into the front room when they're talking about the listing, means that the vendors are prepared for that, rather than just we'll slap it everywhere and see how that works through. So sort of, I think that's been around for a while, and I've seen people like Knock Dayton have their I think it's called Robin's early
It
bird
is, yeah, after his
email,
dad,
and
yeah, after Mike's dad, yeah.
exactly. So seeing that more sort of marketing schedule come along, rather than just you get your listing and stick it everywhere you can immediately, sort of building a bit of anticipation and interest. Whether that'll persist with the change that we're expecting in 26 towards more of a buyer's market, but those sort of innovations have been quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the CRMs, or some of the CRMs have been doing as well is quite interesting. If you kind of look at the sort of big three, obviously Street has done a lot of really innovative stuff, and you hear from agents about how much better the letting side is now. That's kind of solidified and is now a really strong kind of viable option. And then obviously it's sprinkled some AI dust over the top of it as well with their receptionist and various other things, virtual staging, which looks amazing. So those guys I think have set the bar really high. I think Alto has had some quite welcome, more openness about
Mm.
it and more kind of collaborative approach, which I think has been really, really good for agents and obviously for the kind of prop tech community too. And then Reapit, they're kind of also started to sort of appear very much more kind of unified, I think is their platform, isn't it? Their one platform, and seem to be bringing a little bit more to the agents out there as well. So I think, again, if you kind of look at it in the round, there's actually been quite a lot of, like I said earlier on, quite a lot of sort of innovation and quite a lot of change and forward thinking and forward planning amongst some of these larger organizations as well.
Yeah, spot on with the CRM specifically. That Alto coming along with the partnerships piece, it's sort of maybe a little bit behind Reapit with their partnerships angle, but they've really gone to town on it, haven't they? And it almost looks like Alto are doing the OEM approach to sort of embedded within Alto, that you've almost seamlessly interacting with these things, and almost you don't know that you're dealing with a partner at times around it. And there's a sort of shout out to people who aren't necessarily in the top three as well, but the likes of Moneypenny bringing in their voice AI, which you could
Yeah.
look at it and say, well, they're cannibalizing their own clients. But as you've just touched on, if they don't do it, someone else like Street with their virtual receptionist is going to do it. So it's just making sure you're moving with the times, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, that's our roundup of property for 2025. Let's dive into our AI and tech news for this year. All right. So look, there has just been so much going. If on a week by week basis we struggle to cram all this sort of stuff in, then going large on a year summary. So we're going to kind of group these things together, and I think if we look at the generative AI models, so actually the kind of large language models that we're all getting increasingly familiar with, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, and Grok from XAI. Those, and then the Chinese models. We started the year with 4.0. And then that kind of very quickly was sort of superseded by ChatGPT 5 that sort of came out middle of the year, and it was a bit of it didn't really land as well as I think that everybody hoped did it
A little bit
until
of a backlash, wasn't there?
yeah, 5.1 was an improvement. 5.2 is really good. So that kind of, but that only dropped like about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So it's taken them a little while to kind of get back up to the stage. But for me, I think the story of the year is 100% Google.
It's
And
Google's
Google's,
year. You've got to say that.
yeah. Ah, but the way they've come back, that they started the year almost like as a kind of punchline for how to, how not to use your dominance to good effect, and kind of OpenAI was still riding high. Everyone loving a bit of ChatGPT 4.0, and then just suddenly in November time, Gemini 3 Pro dropped, and it was just phenomenal. Nano Banana Pro, all of this just amazing tech, and it all was just distributed into all of their different products and services really, really seamlessly. And I think they've got a really, really strong platform to kick on into 2026.
Well, that's the key point, isn't it? Is that product strategy of rolling everything out at once, and almost they've not quite hit this yet, but that iterative approach of releasing things and not just waiting for their big I/O events and having a huge one, which is ultimately what ChatGPT. You sound like Boris Johnson when you're doing it. If anyone is listening to you on speed 1.8 or whatever it is you listen to podcasts, ChatGPT.
Boris Johnson.
Have you not seen Boris Johnson and his ChatGPT? And
I have not.
that can be
No.
your video of the week. Stick that in at the end. Video of the year. Well, you do sound very like him when you're doing yours. But
Thanks very much. It's been a dream since I was a young
huge
man.
that huge drop, and then getting the rebellion for ChatGPT 5.0 because of people losing the people they've come to know and love. As I say, people
Yeah.
that they're interacting with and the personalities and as a reminder that when 5.0 came out, they dropped the picker, and it was a case of
Yeah.
the model was going to decide what you interacted with, and that was dialed back pretty quickly, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
I think what we'll see next year is a lot more regular releases and iterations as we go through it. And bearing in mind that image generation at the start of the year wasn't really a thing, and then we got the Chat GPT image model, and then Nano
Yeah.
Banana, and now we've
Studio
already had
Ghibli.
the latest. Yeah, exactly. This all the Studio Ghibli, the toy that went over at
Yeah.
LinkedIn as well. Everyone's toy or model or Barbie doll or whatever it was, and then we got an update to Nano Banana, and we got another version of ChatGPT Image. Was it Image 1.5? And
1.5. Yeah.
I think next year we'll see more regular releases with less big bang impact in the way that we've done
Yeah.
before. But that's better. That's more stable
Interesting.
anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. And yeah, it is. I mean, I've spoken at length about how I've been using it for all sorts of things, from infographics to ads to, this is the Nano Banana Pro. It's phenomenal. And yeah, to think back to this time last year, and as you said, there was almost kind of like an acceptance that we'd hit a sort of plateau, and actually kind of this was probably about as good as it was going to be for a long old time. But yeah, it's just come on phenomenally over the recent times. So yeah, no, fair play to them. And I think, as you say, it's going to be probably a bit more iterative. The more historic or traditional software updates, which was always like a big bang, like you said, kind of like big event stuff. It's just no, let's just keep chucking stuff out, because it does feel like the competition has heated up.
Mm.
Even to be fair, XAI, and Grok Image is really quite something. It's not as good as the other two yet, but it's much better than the other two were at the beginning of the year. So yeah, it is it's yeah. I don't know if anybody's tried it, but if you just chuck an image into Grok, then it just instantly makes it into video, even when you actually just want it to recut the image, which is quite annoying. But anyway, it's still really, really phenomenal and really, really impressive. But yes, so those guys have come out of nowhere. Obviously need to check in with Claude, Anthropic's Claude. Their code, Claude code, is still pretty much the bar that most people, I think, want to hit. And have you changed your kind of coding habits over time?
I'm still on Codex, or rather, I'm on Codex. I use VS Code with Codex built into it. You asked on a previous one about Cursor, and I think some people are still using VS Code as their IDE or
Mhm.
integrated developer environment, and others have moved on to Cursor, which is basically a fork of VS Code, and then swapping between sort of the Codex or the Claude code. I really like Claude code as a command line interface where you're using the terminal. You can get it to do quite a lot of almost project management type activities rather than just writing code. So
Mm.
I've been experimenting with that over Christmas. But the one that and they were quite interesting from Anthropic is the fact that they've not launched into the multimodal model wars like we're seeing with Gemini. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Like Gemini
Yep.
and ChatGPT have done. They've very much stuck to their knitting, haven't they? And dealing with just the very much text-based approach to large language models. And
Yeah,
my brother purged over the back end of the year all of our podcasts. The poor lad, and he said that we mentioned Manus
sounds
quite a lot.
painful.
So I'm surprised we haven't mentioned Manus, but they've started using
It's true.
Nano Banana, haven't they, as part of their model now when generating images and presentations.
Yeah, and it is interesting. So you look at Cursor and Lovable's another one, and the kind of dismissive thing was that they were always just wrappers around this other technology, and pretty soon the large language models themselves would catch up. And I think it is interesting if you look at Claude, and Claude, as you say, stick to their knitting, but their revenue per token, which I think is probably going to become an increasingly important kind of metric, that they make the most out of all of them, because they're
Mm-hmm.
charging people for a really good coding model that people understand and know that you can actually get an answer from and blah blah. Whereas, the others are still in the land grab kind of side. They're still consumers and all that sort of stuff. So they're almost giving it away. So I do think it's a really interesting, is everyone just going to kind of box themselves off into different specialisms? And where would that leave the likes of Cursor and Lovable? If everybody is just kind of going, right, well, actually, Claude is just going to be amazing, so I don't need to pay any more for these other ones. But yeah, I think 2026. I wouldn't be surprised if the kind of Lovable love in and the Cursor kind of fandom is starts to taper a little bit, because coding seems to be such a competitive area for all these different large language models, that I imagine they're going to want to try and capture all that revenue themselves.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we touched on the sort of the exhaust, that frontline information and data that the wrappers, as you call them, obviously quite rightly, because that's what everyone calls them, are getting. Like, the idea of Cursor is that when you're coding and writing things, it's already predicting and offering help and advice that then it's handing off to the large language model, be it Claude or be it Codex, to execute just the very, very end piece. So that knowledge that at the moment the large language models don't have access to. Similar with,
Mm.
unless you're using Claude in the CLI, you're not getting that level of interaction. And Lovable, for me, Lovable is, like we talk about vibe coding. It came as a term in February. So it was coined by Andre just in February. And I think vibe coding actually splits in two. There's vibe coding for non-technical people, and then vibe coding for developers. And actually, for developers, it's more agentic coding. So you set off in the terminal a task, and it can now work for between 20 and 35 hours before returning to you with code.
Yeah,
Obviously, the things I'm working on are nowhere near that sort of size. But then with vibe coding in more of the, I was going to say traditional sense, but the non-technical sense,
yeah,
means you don't need to do wireframes anymore. You can actually start and build out websites or applications or ideas just by saying into the context
yeah,
window exactly what you want. And then Lovable comes along and adds in the things you need. And Replit's one I use because it goes a bit
yeah,
more technical with things like OAuth. But you can actually take sort of a design paradigm from, say, an app that you've been using that you want to use in your area. You can take something like with Repit, they have their Elements UI library. So you can drop a link into that and say, I want to take this style of design, this design paradigm. I want to use these UI components, and I want to do X, Y, and Z. And Lovable will build you a working web app that you can then use as your wireframes. There's no more sort of hanging around in Figma or pulling stuff
yeah,
together in Balsamic. And that can go all the way up. I think I was listening to something that said that app stores like Google Play and the App Store by Apple, the submissions are up 24% on last year, and it's the highest
really?
volume of apps that have been pushed through since 2015.
Wow.
And so it's like, it's not necessarily directly off the back of being able to vibe code stuff in the likes of Lovable, Replit, and as you say, even ChatGPT and Claude, but
Mm.
the allowing non-technical people to build something that they can actually show off and hand round the pub, and actually you have
Yeah,
an idea and you can go off and build it in a matter of hours, is
yeah,
absolutely fantastic. And I think we'll see that divergence of things like Lovable are very much for the vibe coding, and then agentic AI, where like sort of Claude Code are within the terminal, will continue to propel people through. And I've touched on before, people like Merch Cloud have rebuilt their entire product suite from infrastructure and architecture right the way through to front end by agentic coding, so that in
yeah.
doing so, the agentic code has the knowledge and awareness of everything it's written and can therefore be more efficient going forward.
Yeah, I think it's going to be amazing next year. And again, kind of fast forwarding to this time next year, what will we be talking about? I think you know so many more people are going to be giving this a swing. It feels like when suddenly everybody could create images and things like that. Back in sort of the early memes. People were just creating stuff just for fun and just almost disposable stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we're going to see a lot more remixing, where people take something that somebody else has started and then just add some more to it, and that will be visually from images and videos, but also I think in coding and apps and stuff like that as well. So I think it's going to be it's going to just bring coding into the kind of mainstream and just being an activity that people like me can do rather than necessarily people who've got the kind of core skills. There will always be a need. And, again, we obviously have got a tech team here for people who know what they're doing, because otherwise it will just all fall apart. But for the fun stuff, hey, we can all get involved. And I think that's going to be a real feature next year. I think it's going to be great fun. We touched on Agentic and Manus. So Agentic AI, I think, is a core theme from this year that we should really have a look at, because it's kind of just started to peek its way out of the sort of more generative stuff in 2025. So this Agentic, for those that don't know, is essentially where you give AI a task and it will go off and do that task, and it will find out ways of doing it itself. And as Matt says, sometimes you can actually get Agentic codes, AI coding, that can go off and spend 20 hours trying to build some stuff and then come back to you for you to check it. So yeah, that I think is going to be, and you can see it in things like searching. So we talked about vibe searching. Can you find a property that's got 3 bedrooms, riverside setting, blah blah blah? And people, I think, are increasingly going to start turning to that, as they already are. You can see it's in the numbers in when people are doing property searches, people actually looking for particular lifestyles, particular types of neighborhood, particular combinations of a great school and accessibility. And I think that's only going to increase into 2025. What's your take on the sort of agentic side, man?
We're going to see multi-agent systems in 2026. 2025 has been that sort of birth of the awareness of the reasoning models. O3 was obviously around at the back end of 2024 from ChatGPT, but not a lot of people were using it. And I think no one actually really started using reasoning specifically in ChatGPT until 5.0 came along, and they brought that in, that model picker, and suddenly people are like, oh, what does this thing do? And I certainly have 5.2 stuck on the thinking mode all the time now, and very much strategizing with it. But DeepSeek in January, when they launched, and suddenly everyone was like, well, not only can I see the chain of thought where these reasoning models are working through, but you can actually, it went straight to the top of the charts as well, didn't it?
It did.
App Store. Elon didn't sue them for that one, like he did with Sam Altman, but no, that's not even allegedly. He did definitely sue them, didn't he?
100%. Yes.
And I think from the companies I work with and the businesses, I've seen it right across enterprise, and looking at some of the KPMG reports as well about 2025. They have their quarterly pulse report. Businesses have been preparing their infrastructure for actually harnessing these agentic AI, because you need access to the data. You need the data, as you touched on a couple of weeks back, in a structured way. That's why coding works so well, because the code's written in a structured way and the databases are structured. But businesses aren't like that. They might have a silo of information in a spreadsheet over here. They might have another silo of information in a CRM. Kerfuffle did a review where I think the average agency has 20 bits of prop tech in it, and each one of those has their siloed data. So it's not just our industry; the whole of industry has been sort of using 2025 to get their infrastructures ready, and there's still a lot of hard work to go. But I see multi-agent models being done, so it's not just a chat window that we're interacting with; it's specialized agents coordinating tasks and handing off to other agents to pick them up, and keeping very finite context on what these people are doing. Almost, you think about it as a marketing team. You got one agent creating the content, you got another creating the Canva designs, you got someone else doing some research, and then a fourth one doing the social media piece, and pulling all those together, and we'll all become sort of orchestrators of those.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, if we were going to guess at what the word of next year is going to be, I think orchestrators or orchestration is going to be right up there, and maybe even make our top 5 as we talk about look back at 2026. But yes, so the ability to
orchestrate. There you go. I've got 4 in already.
We're not counting this one because it's 5. It's have to start next year. But yes, so I think for those out there, genuinely, this, if you've got a couple of days over Christmas, New Year, and you're kind of thinking, because we're all so like kicking back and not doing anything, I know you're busy, but even still, have a real look at agentic AI. Try and understand actually how that might start to fit into some of the stuff you do. Start small, start with little bits and pieces, just kind of just something that you do repetitively, or somebody in your team does repetitively, and just see if you can't get an AI to kind of help you out on that. I used the example recently of basically I'm doing this tour that starts in January, and I could get AI to build these individual images for all of the different areas with a local landmark on it and the date right and all that sort of stuff, just by basically setting it up and then just going next. It's just been churning them out. So yeah, those kinds of things you do repetitively, ask it questions, get it to help you strategize what you should be doing with it. But it's yeah, there's some phenomenal tech out there that I don't think many of us, myself included, are using to its max. So yeah, I think would be a really good use of your your next couple of days as we go into 2026. Okay, so just some other things that kind of almost mentioned in dispatches that happened through the year that just to kind of occasionally remind ourselves. We got quite a lot of sort of voice, 11 Labs music generation, Notebook LM really improved a lot of its outputs, both from the video side as well as the audio side. Sora 2 dropped, although we still haven't got over here.
You got a little bit of it at Christmas, didn't you? It's like a tease.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, still nothing that's going to enable me to, yes,
remix
basically.
those videos and have yourself turn up as what's the term? A cameo. So you can put yourself in as a cameo.
Yeah, absolutely. We had loads of browsers. So AI browsers. I am still using the ChatGPT Atlas browser. So essentially, there's a panel on the right hand side, and I can do when I'm just looking at a particular, let's say, agent website. I can say how many branches has this got, and it will go and do the hard work for me. So that's a really good thing. Have you been playing around with those, Matt?
I have not, but I was having a wry smile to myself because in the way that we touched on earlier, you've locked me out of your Notebook LM that you teased me with. You've been moved on to Microsoft, aren't you? So I'm just wondering when your Dell laptop's going to arrive and you won't be able to use your chat.
I know, tell me about it. Yes, so it is. Yes, as we professionalize as a startup, then we're standardizing a lot of things. So some of them I'm just kind of trying to keep jealously guarded. So at the moment, I'm still able to use ChatGPT Atlas, but it does only work on Mac. You see, I just use it Mac, so I don't really know what happens in the other realms. So that's been happening. Just loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff that we hopefully. What you will do is perhaps be interested enough in some of the things we've just touched on to kind of go back and maybe, just listen at your leisure to some of the other really insightful analysis, that you get from this particular show every single week. Matt?
Yeah, you don't have to do an Anders and absolutely power through 59 episodes worth before you fly to New Zealand.
No, you don't have to, but you might like to. All right. I think, Matt, that's all we've got time for this week and indeed year. So, on a personal level, thanks for being there, mate. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks for everyone to turning up and listening to us each week. The figures have been quite incredible, haven't they?
It really has, yeah. So we've got so many really wonderful listeners, and thank you everybody out there for listening in. And we'll be back this time next week when we will have a whole new year to run at, and many topics that we're already secreting away to have a chat about because we know there's stuff happening all the time. But yeah, genuinely, thank you to everybody out there for listening. Have a wonderful new year into 2026. And healthy, happy, prosperous, and looking forward to seeing you on the other side. All the best.
Have a great hog, Minnie and Mal.
Thanks, mate.